certainly sets the stage for voters to decide this coming up in November. Abortions can continue in this state. This lawsuit against 3 prosecuting attorneys, the judge very soundly ruling today that that will be the case. Interestingly, the other side pushing for this abortion ban is not here in court, but we do have an assistant attorney general here. Please step in. Let's talk with you. This is a victory for your side. What do you take away from how this judge ruled?
I think the judge's opinion was very thorough and thoughtful, and I think it showed and demonstrated that he paid close attention to the proofs that we entered. He found the state's witnesses extremely credible, and I think we're all very grateful for the time he put in. We're obviously very pleased with the opinion, and overall we're relieved because it's such an extraordinary issue for women, and we're so relieved that the court took it as seriously as he did.
How quickly do you expect the other side to appeal?
I expect to see an appeal pretty quickly, I would say. I would not be shocked if it happened today.
Are you surprised that they were not here for the reading of this?
I am surprised. I think when you are as emphatic as these prosecutors have been about this issue and how important it is, if it's that important, you show up in court. And so I was a bit surprised they didn't show up today, but the state is here, and our colleagues, the prosecutors who agree with our position, are here. And so, we're ready for the next part of this case, which certainly will be in the Court of Appeals.
The other side, pro-life, will say this is, we heard the judge talk about how women are harmed without this continuing. The other side will say the unborn is harmed. How do you respond to that?
I think we heard part of that discussion in court, and I will say that I think people can disagree about the morality and the religion underlying the issue, certainly, but this is a legal issue, and what we're talking about is equal protection and bodily autonomy and really important constitutional rights to over 2 million people, citizens of the state. And so for me, the issue is legal, and it should be discussed in that context.
Some people would say this was a political ruling today.
I don't know how you can say that the healthcare decisions and choices and the availability of healthcare options for 2 million women is a political decision. Sounds to me that the governor's case and what we presented to case today and for the past 2 days says otherwise. This is a human rights issue. Women's issues are human rights issues. And so I think some folks want to politicize it and talk about it in terms of ideology, but what we're talking about is healthcare, and that's a medical issue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We do have some, that was Christy Grassi, come right down here. We do have a couple of the prosecutors here who have been monitoring this case and are actually on the same side.
What does today mean? How are you feeling?
This is Mr. Eli Savitt from Washtenaw County. Go ahead, sir.
Well, fundamentally what it means is that abortion remains safe, legal, and accessible in the state of Michigan as it has for the past half century. I thought the opinion was phenomenal. The judge rightly recognized the overwhelming interest in maintaining the status quo, allowing continued access to a needed medical procedure, and really understands that there are significant bodily integrity and equal protection issues if this ban would go into effect. So it's a great day. It's a great day for providers, for women, and for people that can get pregnant in Michigan.
How do you respond to some say this was a political ruling here today?
I don't think it was political at all. I think, if you listen to the judge's ruling from the bench, he backed everything that he said up with citation to legal authority, to constitutional authority that has been developed for years. So, if in any sense anybody says it's political, that's just belied by the actual ruling that the judge gave, which was firmly rooted in Constitution.
He weighed in on credibility, which is something that judges are supposed to do and we want them to do. And I think a really important thing to note here is that that judge sat through hours and hours of testimony and ruled that the witnesses that the governor put on the stand were extremely credible and compelling. And more importantly, the 2 witnesses that the defendants in this case who want to prosecute providers put on the stand were not credible. And I think that is really important to note. And I also think I'm really relieved about the judgment and the ruling. I think it was thoughtful, but more importantly, I'm relieved that everyone in this state knows that it doesn't matter what county you live in now. You are not, as a provider, going to be prosecuted, and you, as a woman and girls, have a right at this moment because of this ruling to reproductive freedom. And also, the judge noted, rightly so, that in November, this will most likely be on the ballot, and the voters of Michigan will decide. And I'm confident that reproductive rights will become a constitutional right in the state of Michigan, regardless of Dobbs.
Do you think that if it gets on the ballot, that it's actually going to divide the country, that this issue really will polarize the country and maybe do more harm than good?
No, I think it is exactly what why this country is so great and why I love to be an American, because it's exactly how it should work. The voters will go and the voters will decide. And I believe actually that across the country there is support, overwhelming support for reproductive rights.
If you look at Kansas. Look at Kansas. Kansas just passed a similar amendment by 11%, I think it was. I think it actually increased in number after Election Day. So there is overwhelming support, I think, for reproductive freedom, both in red states, blue states, and purple states.
And for prosecutors, now, Ellie Savitt in Washtenaw County and Karen McDonald in Oakland County, we can spend our resources and our time prosecuting gun violence, mass shootings, child sexual assault, human trafficking. We have real serious crime. And the voters and the people of our counties expect us to care about public safety. That is our first priority. And now we can do that.
You had already said, though, you were going to use your discretion and not enforce that, even without this ruling.
Right, but I believe the people in this state have a right to consistency and stability and do not have to question based on which side of the road they're on, whether what criminal culpability they have. That is not how we want it to
What do
work.
you say to the pro-life people, though? The pro-life people who were in the courtroom, they were protesting, hundreds of them outside the courthouse when this started.
There was nobody like that today. In fact, the lawyers representing them didn't even appear in court today,
What
which
do you
is
make of that?
I think that's just not surprising. We're here because we believe in our constitutional rights, and as prosecutors, we want to prosecute violent, serious crime. And
There's no merit to a pro-life argument at all?
there's merit to every argument. I just think that the court, in its ruling, which hopefully will be made public soon, very, very concisely made a ruling based on the credible testimony of the governor's case and the not credible testimony of the defendants.
The other side could appeal by 5 o'clock this afternoon. This isn't over.
There's, I think everybody fully expects an appeal, but as things stand, the status quo that's been in place for the past 50 years remains. And Charlie, to your point, certainly everybody is entitled to their opinion, and this is one that divides people deeply. But what people are not entitled to is the prosecution of a crime that violates the Constitution.
Now, with reproductive freedom for all, there's a lot of questions right now. Does this allow for too much? Is this too big of a window? What does it do for protecting against malpractice? What are your thoughts on some of the concerns around the ballot proposal?
Yeah, so quite candidly, and I say this as a lawyer, and I will also refer people to the Detroit Free Press article earlier this week in which my colleague at the University of Michigan, Leah Littman, debunked all of these arguments being raised by the other side. What the Reproductive Freedom for All ballot initiative does is it preserves in the Constitution the status quo under the Supreme Court's ruling in Dobbs and Casey. It does not prohibit the legislature from regulating late-term abortions. It is very clear on that. All it does is expressly constitutionalize what has been the state of affairs in this country for the past half century, and any arguments to the contrary are not backed by the text of the language and are simply made up.
And more importantly,
abortion's legal, right?
This
right
court's
now?
ruling, I think it's very important to note, the status of the law right now is that an abortion is legal up to a certain point. Nobody standing here and nobody I know is ever advocating that late-term abortions should be legal. It's not. It has not been the law for the last 50 years, and it isn't the law now. And all we want is exactly what we have now and we've had for 50 years, which is at up to a certain point, viability, abortion care is legal.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there you have it. That's the reaction out here. And as you heard them say, interestingly, the other side was not here to hear this ruling. We do expect an appeal, possibly be before 5 o'clock this afternoon. We will work to get the other side of this case in later editions of 7 Action News. Reporting live in Pontiac, Jim Kurtz, 7 Action News.